Good evening and welcome to MTV Community Forum. I'm your host Byron Campbell and of course our co-host Chris Diali. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Byron, and again welcome to our viewers and listeners. We're happy to be here another evening to chit chat and do other things.
But Chris, we have our guest this evening is Ali Gill, and we're going to be talking about reparation. You know, it's just particularly on the 5th, is it the 5th or the 7th?
The 5th.
5th of August, we have celebrating emancipation.
Yes.
So it is timely that we can talk about this very important issue. So after our chit chat, we come back right to Ali. Chris, breaking news today. I mean, I was woken out of bed with this information, you know, like the reports of the dismissal of Senator Jonathan Lacrette, Minister of Youth and Sports Culture.
Yeah.
This was like, wow. And following that, you had all kind of, well, rumors, but, you know, social media came alive. I was hearing there was issue in the cabinet, the guys were, I heard there was issue of Carriacou and the aid to Carriacou. There was issue of personal other issues, but this is breaking news. I heard nothing prior to this. What are you hearing?
Well, you know, let me start by saying that when you sit in cabinet, you serve at the absolute pleasure of the Prime Minister. And you have to understand that and what powers the Prime Minister have under the Constitution. So he could dismiss anybody from cabinet. That's his prerogative based on what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to wait to hear what he says tomorrow at 10 o'clock before we go and listen to all the rumors that are circulating. But there must be a fundamental issue involved for the Prime Minister to take the decision to remove the gentleman from the Senate. And, so it has to be significant.
I mean, not only from the Senate, from the administration, you know.
I mean, he's a senator. I mean, from that standpoint, he's not a elected representative.
Right.
And even if you're an elected representative, the Prime Minister could always move you as a minister.
But it has to be something significant.
It has to be something.
Minister to
and we may never.
And you're not prepared to speculate.
No. And we may never know the absolute truth of what has happened. I think we need to give the Prime Minister the opportunity to say why he took such a.
He has a press conference tomorrow. He said he's be talking about CARICOM. He's going to be talking about the gun laws, the gun amnesty, and other matters. So we wait, I'm impatient, Chris.
Well, I mean, it's not often you hear Prime Minister remove a senator who is also a minister. But it has happened before where Prime Ministers change senators on their side. So it's nothing drastic from that point of view.
It is drama, Chris. This is dramatic. Chris, this is dramatic. It is, right? It is. Chris, CARICOM meeting just ended yesterday. I saw you at the opening ceremony on television, of course. What did you make of it? Of course, before you answer, Chris, I know that the agenda item had to do with agri-food systems, food and nutrition security. We've been talking about climate change and sustainable development, foreign policy, CARICOM single market, et cetera, et cetera. What did you make of it? What have you gathered?
Well, let me say that I was pleased with the roundabout and the renaming of the roundabout. I think that was a positive thing for the CARICOM and for people to understand, the average man to understand the states that are there in CARICOM and what we are about. Of course, the medal presentation to Clyde Lloyd and Roderick Rainford was also an excellent.
That's true.
But when you listen to the outgoing chairman, President Irfan Ali, and the incoming chairman, I think a lot of time was spent trying to justify the relevance of CARICOM. And I have been a cynic, as our Prime Minister said, about certain things, because CARICOM has been around quite a number of years. They celebrate 50 years or 51 years. And in that time, if we talk about major achievements of CARICOM, they're little. CARICOM single market has not functioned as it ought to. The free movement of people in CARICOM has not functioned as it ought to. So there are basic things that we've been trying to get in place and has not been in place, and a lot of it has to do with the politics. So we go to a CARICOM meeting, and I remember our Prime Minister first meeting, and he mentioned it in his speech, talk, but nothing happens after. And they're trying to change that perspective. So President Defran Ali spoke a lot about, what they did, the Haiti issue, the relief to countries.
But what does it mean to the people?
That's the point.
What's the difference is it making in their lives? Because
the OECA, as a matter of fact, have had more achievements than CARICOM.
Yeah.
And that is
but
part
to
of
give
the
the
issue.
Prime Minister, to be fair, in his remarks, he spent a lot of time on climate change and the implications of climate change, the disasters we're experiencing. And I thought he dealt with this issue at length and highlighted the implications of climate justice, for example. Talked about that a bit. And I thought that was important. I would say he spent a big part of his speech on that area. So I was quite pleased. He also talked about the digital transformation agenda, which I thought was, I think this comes under his responsibility now.
That's right.
Chris.
In the quasi-cabinet, he is responsible for science and technology and ICT.
But one of the agenda items had to do with engaging the how you call it, not the NGOs, but the
civil
society. But we have not done this in Grenada. I don't think this administration, for example, has engaged civil societies. At least they've said no. When we had the head of the Catholic Church here, they said no. We had Labour here, they said no, and other NGOs. So what's going on there? I mean, is CARICOM supporting this? But why aren't we doing it at the local level?
Well, I'll give you an experience I had. The very first CARICOM meeting I went to when I was Vice President of the Caribbean Association of Industry and Commerce was that the Prime Minister of Barbados at the time, what's his name again? Forget the gentleman's name. They didn't want private sector in the CARICOM meeting. As a matter of fact, we got a lot of blows saying private sector not doing this, private sector not supporting. Ifran Ali said the same thing as well. But now they would like to engage the private sector. Now they're currently saying they like to engage civil society. They're asking for Labour to come in. Labour was there. And
I saw.
So I think they're recognizing the fact that societies and what they want to implement cannot happen without involving other partners. And in our case, we had the social pact here, and which this government has not taken on to. But here you're asking for the same players to be part. So it does send differentiating messages.
It does not.
So, and you see, this is why people are cynical about CARICOM. Because sometimes the messaging is not in the same direction as what they're talking. And this is part of the problem.
And one of the big issue there is, of course, the 25-25. This is by 2025 to reduce food import bills in the Caribbean within CARICOM by 25%. That's a joke. I know it's not going anywhere.
Well,
and I don't think you should use burial as a reason or excuse
Prime Minister
for not achieving it.
blaming it on burial, but I mean,
absolutely not.
We can't get a transportation issue in the Caribbean.
But there's a southern.
And how you're going to have the 2025 thing with agriculture if Guyana is supposed to be the lead country for
this? But Gonzalez spoke about a southern ferry service, I think Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados, and he indicated that thereafter it's going to serve Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I don't know. So something's happening, maybe. But anyway, Chris, we come back to CARICOM. But anyway, we've had the election in Venezuela, the results. There's some controversy there. Obviously, we know the U.S. and Western powers before they had certain anticipation of these results, and it was. But interestingly, South Africa, who was there? I think there was 15 South Africans there as observers from the ANC, and they say they are very disappointed with those remarks. As far as they're concerned, it was free and fair. But there are other observers there, like NGOs, who said they have issues with the results. So they're asking Venezuela Prime Minister to make it public, release the results, be transparent about it.
I don't think President Maduro his margin of victory wasn't great. I think it was
51
or 51%.
So it's very narrow.
Just narrow. And when you listen to the different opinions in Venezuela and what is happening, there seemed to be a movement where they would like to see Maduro change and get new leadership into the country. Of course, this politics and the power it brings, muddles things. And if the US and the major European countries are not in favor of what's happening there, you could assume that somehow, some way down the road, if Maduro may not be there.
Chris, we have a new control of customs, Ms. Forsyth.
I think that is such a great thing. Here we have a young lady, bright,
Yeah.
have been in customs all these years, Karen Forsyth Hall, and I think is our first female comptroller in customs. Again, there's a glass ceiling that has been broken there again, and kudos to her and the women and what they bring to the table. I think that is such a big thing for us that we shouldn't let it pass just like that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations,
Chris,
absolutely.
Traffic carnival, some concern. Look, we have the latest numbers I'm seeing, we have 65,000 registered vehicles here. We have about average of 300 new ones coming in per month. So has it reached chaos yet?
Well, you know,
where are we going with this?
You know, the traffic thing doesn't bother me because we don't seem to be following the laws and regulations in Grenada relating to traffic.
Yeah.
So we have indiscriminate stopping in the middle of the road. You can't pass.
Yeah.
Then we have people double and triple parking. You can't pass. Yeah. And it creates risk and possible accidents that we don't need. Yeah. And you know, even going around about here, nothing about give way to traffic on the right anymore. It's who reach first pass. You know, so that we in a situation where if we don't take this thing into control, and for the carnival season, there is so much more vehicles on the road as rentals for people coming in to visit and so on, who may not know the traffic and understand certain things. And you and I, who living here every day and had to deal with it, you know, it actually makes me not want to go nowhere. No. Because the risk you face with the people not obeying the rules, you're drinking, you will be inundated with alcohol and so on. You get worried that, you know, the risk is doubling for the carnival period. And I know the police going to try their best with the traffic and try and see, because they already say they're going to make you blow. And if you're above the limit, they're arresting you.
Well, I know that there's now the Transport Commission, and I know they're very active. We look forward to see what transformation, what difference their input is going to make in the medium to long term, of course, you know. Olympics is on, Chris. How are our athletes doing? Any reports?
Well, the athletic part didn't start yet. I know we had some swimmers, 2 swimmers went up with the team, and there's a young lady I want to highlight who did a 100-meter freestyle, and she came second in her heat. Of course, her timing, I can't remember her names, and I apologize for that, but her timing wasn't sufficient to carry her to the semi-final, and I think, you know, she did well in terms of representing Grenada in swimming and coming second. I mean, I think that is a big thing for us. If she continues, she could only improve, and then she understands what is required now to get to that level. So I want to say kudos to her, kudos to the Swimming Association in Grenada and what she achieved. I think that is such a big thing.
Of course, the semis are on. The semis were quite successful. My information, we now await the finals.
Well, there are a lot of finals run off already.
Finals
So
no, I mean the semis in terms of carnival. I moved, Chris. I'm in the carnival already.
I mean,
the semis. The semis, we had the semi soca, the semi groovy, and the semi calypso. So and so next week is going to be an active week. We have
I mean, we're bringing back the March Gras. Remember, we didn't have the March Gras for a few years.
So I'll see you there, of course. So Chris, we have Ali. Brother Gil, reparation. So we're going to take a short break. Viewers, stay with us. We're going to be right back. Very interesting second segment of our program. Stay with us.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. Familiarize yourself with your electrical panel, as it may be necessary to switch off the power during a storm or flood. Make sure you install a transfer or isolation switch to prevent your generator feeding electricity to Grenlec's line. If trees are too close to power lines, call Grenlec at 237 for advice. By following these easy steps, you will be well on your way to being hurricane ready. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
The The Grenada Cultural Foundation, in collaboration with the St. Andrews Development Organization, SEDU, the Grenada National Preparations Committee, GNRC, and Timber will commemorate Emancipation Day 2024 under the theme, In the Spirit of Emancipation, we embrace our African identity through our cultural expressions. Are you ready to celebrate Grenada's rich cultural heritage and history of resilience? Then look out for the televised panel discussion on July 28th. Proudly don your African wear on August 1st and join the Liberation and Ancestral Freedom March from the Old Public Library to the Market Square starting at 11 a.m. Then we complete the day at the Spice Baskets and witness the reenactments of the proclamation together with our cultural presentations. And finally, look out for the continuation of the activities in Grenville on August 5th with a parade from Pearls to Grenville at 3 p.m. and the Flambeau Walk from Canal Road at 6:30 p.m. Mark your calendars and get ready to join us in celebrating Grenada's emancipation with pride and joy. See you there.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome back to Community Forum. And let me correct myself, not correct, but say that the young lady name I had mentioned about her swim in the Olympics is Tilly Colimo. So I am making sure I say that again, Tilly Colimo, because this is a young lady that I thought represented us well in that meet and came second. So kudos to her and her parents and her entire support group that got her to that point, and I think she could only do better if she continues. So, Mr. Gill is with us. Ali Salambi Gill is a criminal defense attorney, a former Minister of Culture, and in 2023 served as the chair of Spice Mass Corporation. From 2019 to 2022, he was Grenada's ambassador to CARICOM and is currently the chair of Grenada's National Reparation Committee. And that is what we're here to discuss with Mr. Gill tonight. Mr. Gill is a graduate of UWI, as the Prime Minister said in CARICOM, and holds a master's in maritime law as well as an MBA from the DeVry University. So, Mr. Gill, good evening. Welcome, my brother, to the program.
Thank you so much, and good evening to you and co-host as well as all of the viewers and listeners.
So this evening we're talking reparations, and as you could see from that short bio from Ali, he is well qualified to be the chair of the Reparations Committee. So let me start off by asking you, what is the current state of play?
The struggle continues. That will be a good way to start. We have made some significant strides, and one have to appreciate that the Grenada National Reparations Committee is part of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, which was a 2013 mandate of CARICOM. And so that most CARICOM countries have their own chapter of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. We really have made significant strides. In certain respects, we have blazed the trail with certain developments. One have to appreciate that when this CARICOM Reparations Commission was established, it was really and truly to approach governments rather than individuals or institutions. Because the setup of the commission was basically for that commission now to advise CARICOM heads as to how do we approach the governments of Great Britain, Portugal, Spain, France, and so on, the former colonial powers, with regards to the issue of reparative justice. We have then, the dynamics have changed, and we have seen individuals come forward, individuals that came to Grenada like Laura Trevelyan and the family. Then we have seen the Gladstone family went to Guyana, and I believe by the end of this month, by this weekend or early next week, there's a family also going to Jamaica as well to that. You know, old plantation owners, the Richard Drax of the Drax Hall estate in Barbados have made the headlines for all the wrong reasons, because he was, until the last election, was a prominent member of parliament, the richest in the UK, and he had owned these massive plantations in Barbados for many centuries. It came to a head where his ancestors, it came to a head where the Barbados government, to embark upon a housing program in that community, wanted to compulsorily acquire the Draxal estate, or portions of it, to create this housing unit. And they had a serious backlash because the Bajan community believed that Richard Drax should not pay a cent. But of course, the Constitution provides that if you were to acquire lands from any institution, you have to pay. So that Prime Minister Mia Motley apologized and took back the policy. So where we are, what we have witnessed over the last couple of years is, for instance, we have seen Holland, Prime Minister Mark Rutte, former Prime Minister Mark Rutte, in 2018 December thereabouts, apologized for slavery. The King of Holland did likewise. We have seen institutions like the Bank of England. They had, and we have written to them in Grenada, the Bank of England, like a central bank, they had owned 2 plantations here, Hope Estate and Bailey's Estate, and they had owned about 599 slaves. It's the only country where they directly own plantation and slaves. Now, the Bank of England bankrolled the entire industry, from the trading of slaves to the owner of plantations. They gave mortgages to plantation owners and persons who want to engage in the trade. But in Grenada's case, because of a defaulter in the loans, they had to step in. And for a short period of time, they owned plantation and slaves directly. So we have made an approach. They have responded. And what we have done tactically is to, since the election, the British election was come on the 4th of July, is to await the results. We believe, hopefully, that the Labour Party will be more sympathetic. You had someone who is Foreign Secretary, Lamy, who is of Guyanese extract. And so he has spoken in the past with regards to positive things about reparations. So we're hoping that the Labour government in England would be more receptive to the issue of reparative justice. The Church of England, this is the Anglican Church. In recent times, they have come forward, they've apologized, and on the basis that significant sums of money in the Church of England Trust came from the proceeds of the Atlantic slave trade and slavery. And they have put aside £100 million for the purposes of reparative justice, as they say. They had a review committee who they appointed and who recommended to them that they must increase it to £200 million. Now, where we take issue with the Church of England is that they cannot be judge, jury, and executioner in their own cause. In other words, they cannot decide or take upon themselves how much they should make available to reparations, how the money should be spent, who should govern it, and so on.
It's another form of slavery.
So we take issue with that, and we believe that we in the Caribbean, through the Caribbean CARICOM Reparations Commission, we have put a proper structure in place where the Bank of England, the Church of England, governments, and so on, there is a focal point that they can make contact with in terms of reparative justice. Now, if you say to me 5 years ago that we would have achieved what we have achieved? No. I would say to you, I don't think anyone in the leadership of the reparative struggle would have seen us making these strides.
The thing is, though, Ali, when you look at the issue of reparations and the principles, there are other countries that have gone down the road of giving people monies for reparations for different atrocities that may have happened. So it's not a principle that is not well established. The issue is, how do we coordinate it properly for the Caribbean region based on all the atrocities that took place in slavery?
And it begins with, and you can make mention with the Jews.
Yes.
The Jews.
And some of the world wars.
And the world wars. The Jews are the classic case. From the Holocaust, Germany has paid significant amount of money to the Jews with regards to reparative justice. The American government has paid significant amount of monies to the Japanese, who they had in labor in the American Japanese war. So that the issue of reparations is nothing alien, is nothing new, is nothing groundbreaking. But it seems as though when it comes to black people, there is an issue. So that they say to us that this issue of slavery and slave trade happened a long time ago, an indigenous genocide. We cannot forget the Amerindians or first settlers who were basically wiped out from the face of the earth, basically. And interestingly, tomorrow is Emancipation Day.
That's right.
190 years.
On Monday, not tomorrow.
No, it's tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Because I have been...
The holiday is the Monday.
The holiday is the Monday. And I have been calling on the government. And I will use your platform again to speak to my dear friend and former student, history student, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, who will appreciate the issue. The Christmas Day is when the 25th, regardless of which day it falls on. So too is Valentine's. So too is what your Halloween's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So too American Thanksgiving and so on. Why is it we think that the most significant day in the history of African descendants in the Western Hemisphere must be moved or celebrated on any day of the first Monday fallen in August? We believe it's quite inappropriate. And Emancipation Day is Emancipation Day, 1st of August. And without Emancipation Day, I argue that there would not be Independence Day. You see all the big celebrations we have for the 50th anniversary. Emancipation obviously would have been the commencement of the freedom of the people and the freedom of the land which we now inhabit. And as such, Emancipation Day must be given its true relevance to our history and to our peoples. And as long as we continue to sway and to move the Emancipation Day to the first Monday, what is that? So that as a people, I believe we need to be much more conscientious. Tomorrow we celebrate Emancipation Day. I have no interest in the 4th of August. Who wants to do anything there? You could go Rainbow City, Sedu, and so on. But tomorrow we have African Dress Day. We encourage all of our fellow nationals, regardless of race or our Indian brothers and sisters, because we also, on May 1st is Indian Arrival Day, right? African Dress Day, then we also have the libation walk from the public library, old public library, to the market. And those are two significant areas in our capital and have serious significant history. The area of the library there was the main port of entry, where approximately 550 slave ships came in, and approximately 129,000 African descendants disembarked right in front of the library there. The market is where
trading took place.
Not just trading, no, trading took place around the library area as soon as they came out. And we are writing the history, so that what you're saying is not too far-fetched, because that's what we were taught in schools. But the market square was basically used to punish publicly runaway slaves, flogged, publicly humiliation and so on, hanged, public humiliation and so. So the empty space around the library and so on, once they come off the ship, the vessel, that's where it used to be auctioned and so. So that we want to walk that path tomorrow from 11 a.m. And in the evening we have the spice basket, other cultural activities, drumming and reading and different things like that. And let me say that, across the region that happens tomorrow. Grenada, we are now developing these emancipation celebrations. But if you go to Trinidad, Barbados, Antigua, and so on, they have massive activities, and I have also urging our government to spend a little more, or spend some money, because they aren't spending nothing much on emancipation celebrations and so, because it is that significant part of our history.
Yeah, Ali, so we've had, as you mentioned, 190 years of freedom, and every year you have a celebration. But it appears that the emancipation celebration and the reparations are not tied together. We're not seeing it together. We're not seeing a movement. We're not seeing the reparation as a movement. The question is, how do you, what role does education and public awareness play in this movement, in growing this movement? How can this happen?
Public education, I wouldn't say is everything, but public education is a lot to take us to where we really want to be. Now, first of all, the issue of reparative justice is really and truly grounded in many respects on the Emancipation Act. The act to emancipate the enslaved people, in school, we basically learned, about the Emancipation Act and how the religious leaders in England campaigned for the abolition of slaves, and the abolitionists like William Wilberforce and so on. Yeah. The first thing we need to appreciate is that the enslaved people struggled and fought for their freedom. And that was the most controlling factor, most influential factor, along with what Eric Williams referred to as an economic decision to abolish slavery. But also, in the Emancipation Act, what it did was to create the legal basis for the compensation of the slave owners. That's a real devil in the Emancipation Act. And it twofold. One, it compensated the plantation or the slave owners to the tune of £20 million. That £20 million, I believe, if I recall correctly, was 40% of the GDP of Britain at that time. And they took that loan from a Rothschild bank, a Jewish bank. And they finished paying that loan in 2015. So that when we speak of reparative justice, we aren't speaking about 2015. So what you had is that generations of black people in the UK as well, the taxpayers, they would have contributed further to the compensation of these slave owners. Now, the other part of the Emancipation Act was the establishment of what is called the apprenticeship system for 6 years. Now, when the British government did the actuary studies and so, they estimated that the loss to the slave owners of the property, and the property is not the plantation we're talking about, or the sugar factory or the crop.
But the human resource.
The human beings were referred to as property.
Property.
That's the point. They're compensating for the loss of slaves. You know what I mean? They estimated around £43 million. So they gave 20 million in cash. And what they did was to institute a system of apprenticeship where these former slaves will provide free or extremely cheap labor to the plantation in further compensation to make up for the 43 million. But when we went to school, and even when I taught history, I did not teach the issue of apprenticeship from that perspective. Could you imagine the apprenticeship period was supposed to teach the Africans how to be free and how to sell their labor and make small garden. And you can see, I always use in a practical way the communities of Happy Hill, Boucheju and Brizan to really, in that sense, it's really, even up to today, it keeps the structure of the plantation system and the communities vividly in our minds. If you notice, Brizan and Busheju communities in the stone, in the hill, Happy Hill, and then you look at that acreage of arable farmlands, the Busheju area, where the playing field is, the broadcasting and all the lands,
That's correct.
so that they could have moved to do free or cheap labor on the plantation and then go back in the stone in Brizan and Happy and
They
so on.
between the stones.
They're between the stones. But they were expected to do peasant farming between the stones, to plant short crops and so on and sell in the market.
Because the estate owned the hundreds of acres.
Arable lands.
Arable lands. All.
That's-
So here's the point. So how can ordinary citizens in the Caribbean and Grenada and the diaspora, of course, support the reparation movement, because it has to be popular. It has to. How can this happen?
We need
How-
and it goes back to the public education
education.
program.
Yeah.
But to do that, our committee is voluntary.
Yeah.
We have no real budget. The government supports from time to time.
Yeah.
But we need to set up a National Operations Committee Secretariat. Have an office that is funded by the state.
Yes.
Right? That will fund radio and television programs. We fund public lectures and use all the technology to get the young people. We have to be on Instagram. We have to be on Facebook and so on. But that means resources, both financial and human resource. We need that public rollout of education program to really teach some of the basic aspects of history and reparative justice.
So
Correct history too.
yeah,
The correct history.
So CARICOM is leading this. CARICOM has the Reparation Commission has a 10-point agenda. Ali, we may not be able to go into all the 10 points, but what are the salient points? What the salient issue there
I'm glad you asked that.
Yes.
Because when we speak of reparations, you know what people ask us? Oh, Ali, how much money we getting?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the 10-point CARICOM plan is a developmental plan for the region.
Yeah.
Yes, and what it tries to attract, now when we speak of reparations, we are speaking about repairing the harm which was caused by indigenous genocide, the Atlantic slave trade and slavery. So that one, and we believe that just giving us monies, cash, for instance, I make the argument when I do public lectures and so, that you give us all these monies, but to catch up with the more developed world, we'll have to purchase the same things that we want. So all the building materials to improve housing and so on, you have to purchase it back from the West. Technology, you have to purchase it back from the West. So what the CARICOM 10-point plan addresses, the first point is an apology. And I say to persons, when you, as we have learned through Christianity, to get forgiveness, you have to admit that you have sinned and ask for forgiveness. Then we have the issue of indigenous development program, so that in Dominica, for instance, you have a large Kalinago community, and they live on the land which is called Kalinago territory. Even the Kalinagos are even more deprived than we, the African descendants, and so on. So much so that the University of the West Indies has have an ongoing program where every year, every 2 years, they offer scholarship to a Kalinago student, and so that specific focus need to deal with that. The issue of health crisis. One of the lasting effects of slavery and slave trade is the chronic health issues that we have. Diabetes, hypertension, our diet, which goes to our national, we love oil, but let us agree that the ingredients of the oil and so on, and what we,
meat in particular,
the meat,
salted
and so
meat.
salted
Pickled
meats, pickled meat, pigtail, codfish, which has become a staple, is something that was exchanged from the American colonies for rum, and it has become, so I eat a lot of Karaku cornfish rather than the codfish. The cornfish is salt, and salt, so it contributes to the Caribbean, the diabetes and the hypertension, which we suffer as black people in the Caribbean. Black people on the African continent does not suffer from the same problem. So we can directly link our chronic health problems to that. So we are saying to the former colonial, you need to fund the best medication to address the issue of
CDs.
yeah.
So this you would call some of the long-term impacts.
These are long term. So that's why we say repair the harm.
Yeah, yeah.
The educational crisis is the other area that we need to look at. As much as we have made strides, we have a lot of university graduates and so on, but our students accessing university education, someone is probably the most expensive in the world. Right? We could never be on par with the more developed countries in terms of achieving that level of education. So that is an issue that we highlight as part of a 10-point curriculum plan. Debt forgiveness.
Yeah.
From the time 1974, Uncle Gary got debt, the British never gave him a check. So that as much as we malign all leaders around independence and so on, the British really and truly left them to fend for themselves, to pay salaries the next month, to build infrastructure and so on, to build health. If you read the Moyne Commission reports and so on, coming from the 1930s, the Caribbean socio-economic conditions remain the same for a century. From 1838 to the 1938 or thereabouts, people were living in squalor in the Caribbean, for about 100 years,
But you could see it in Janet. You see pictures of the huts
yeah.
and the
I mean, we
shacks.
practically, the British ensured that the development of the Caribbean was stagnated and stifled for approximately 100 years.
Yeah.
So that when we make now strides in education and health and so on, we have done well for ourselves. But that must not be an excuse or a reason why the British ought not to pay their debt. You see? So education is another issue. Debt forgiveness is another issue. ICT, technology transfer.
Yeah.
That's another major point in our 10-point curriculum plan.
Yeah.
I mean, telemedicine, for instance, them fellas in the more developed countries staying in their bedroom and direct a surgery in a hospital and so on and so forth. We have yet to reach there. You know what I mean? In terms of, if we were to purchase what they have now, artificial intelligence, AI, that's how far they move. When will we be able to purchase the technology of artificial intelligence and so on for economic impact into our societies and so on? It takes millions and millions of dollars to pay for the patents and so on and so forth. You can't get those things for free, And then an attorney was making a point to me today that he looked at the O.J. Simpson trial on the weekend in his spare time.
Yeah.
And the technology at the time O.J. Simpson trial was about 30 years ago, a long time ago.
Long time ago.
And the technology they have in the U.S. courts during the O.J. Simpson trial, we yet to have in Grenada. No, this is reality.
Exactly, yeah.
30 years ago, when O.J. Simpson murder trial was going on in the U.S., the technology that they have there, we had to have it in our courthouses, our courtrooms, and so on. So we are more than a generation behind in terms of technology. And let's not get fooled by the fact that we all have smartphones and so on. That's just the peak of the iceberg in terms of what technology can do for our economy. But the point we're making is, if you want to receive cash monies to purchase these technologies, we spend it back the same person that gave it us. So they give it one and they take with another hand.
That's correct.
So that is why the 10-point curriculum plan, which is now under review.
Yeah.
We're reviewing it now, and hopefully before the end of the year, we should be able to, because there are no, as I said, the dynamic of reparations are changing somewhat. The curriculum 10-point plan was promulgated around 2014 or thereabouts.
Yes.
Things have moved on since then, so that we are in the process of reviewing it. But the salient point is that the idea of reparation is not just about cash payments.
That's an important point.
That's an important point.
Structural change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Institutional structural change to develop the economy. Yes. It's not about putting monies in each of us pocket and so on to buy luxury items. We want to transform the society, health, education, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Now, when we also speak about the reparations that the Jews received after the Holocaust, that is
that's what I'm asking. Are there success stories elsewhere?
Tremendous success stories. Tremendous success stories. The government of Israel have to apply to the reparation fund for if they identify a project, they have to apply for the fund to fund the project. So that the last thing we need to do is for the reparation, any resources that we secure for the purposes of reparation, they go into the consolidated fund in Grenada to pay salaries. Anybody close to our own government understands that.
Yes.
So you need a special fund to be established for the purposes of reparations. So that when the government ever identify a project, education, health, whatever, we have a board of trustees and so on established, so the government applies, and then that board of trustees approve and oversee the spending.
I'll give you your thoughts on this. Because you're seeing a trend that is disturbing, and I see all the positives of reparations and what must, as a society, we must change. When you look at climate justice, and the loss and thing fund that they spoke at the last COP and plan to speak in this COP 29, you see these major countries, developed countries talking about, oh, we're going to give 100 million, 200 million, never materializes. And yet still we face the impacts of all the climate, hence the reason for climate justice. We want to take them to court now and so on. So I say that to say that when you look at the reparations, and I hear about putting in the what they did for the Jews will never let you forget through the museums and the other things that happened in the Holocaust. Something like that. Yeah. We need, because our young people don't really have a passion for this. You understand? So I say that to say, are you and the reparations committee believe you and I going to see this thing before we die?
That's the hope. I believe I will see it. And the way you exercising and keeping yourself together, and the way you're farming and pretending to eat healthy, I believe you'll see. But to make a critical point, you touched an important point there. Yeah. The investment in historical institutions is part of the CARICOM plan. Okay. Now, if you go to, like I said, the Bank of England had an exhibition never seen in Grenada before, with all the names of the slaves, the plantations and so on that they owned in Grenada. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do any research in Grenada for slavery and slave trade, you go to the archives in the UK and so on, and so forth. You go to the museums and so. We do not have anything here to teach our people so that they can understand and appreciate the struggles of our ancestors. So that must be done. Now you say climate justice, I say climate reparations. Yeah. And that is part again of the new dynamic of the reparative struggle. And so our Ministry of Climate Change and so on need to be dynamic with regards to how now we rule out this particular frontier of climate justice. And I tell you what, the Industrial Revolution was fueled by the slave trade and slavery. Yes. The Industrial Revolution in Europe. But the Industrial Revolution in Europe, with all the factories and so on, all the coal and different things, was the beginning of the destruction of the climate. So that one can link directly the slave trade with the beginning of the mass destruction of the climate and the environment and so on. Directly link to the coal
was a major energy source.
And to fund all these big factories and so on and so forth in the UK. Now, where we going now with, and I've read quite a few interesting documents and so on the issue of climate change. Scholars have brought that to human rights. It's a violation of human rights. Because what they're saying now is that the destruction by the hurricanes and the erosion of our coast and so on is denying us a peaceful existence as human beings. Our right to exist is practically challenged. And we do not need experts and so on to tell us about climate change. You know. In our lifetime, we can see the changing of the gas. I mean, to have a hurricane that magnitude in June tells you all you need to know. You know, I mean, hurricane season usually peak in September and so on.
Let me give you one example here, Ali. Let's pull out our biggest crop, nutmeg. At Ivan, we were doing 2,200 tons of export. After Ivan, up to pre-Beryl, we were up to 750 tons. From 2,200 to 750. With Beryl now, this is like to go to about 300 or 350. So you see what I'm talking about? All as a result, and this is the livelihoods and economic well-being of the citizens, a primary crop.
And
As an example.
I've been speaking to a lot of the farmers, farmers from Hermitage and Patrick's,
yeah.
and I want to make the plug
Yeah.
and say to them, please plant back in nutmegs. Because a lot of them,
there's frustration.
there's frustration.
Yeah.
You know, farmers say, listen, I know plant back in nutmeg trees after Ivan.
Yeah.
The nose start to look like thing that go be. I didn't decide who's male or female yet, and they're all gone.
That's right.
But if we don't plant them back, we lose this spice, we lose something dear to us.
Remember,
But it is-
cinnamon fall down, clove fall down.
Yeah.
No,
And-
it's
I-
and-
I'm
and-
aware.
That's
Yeah.
going to be a major struggle.
So it's a real, but we need to reinvest in that.
Yeah.
I have not heard yet the government roll out for the agricultural sector post Hurricane Beryl, but it's something that we need to be attuned to because our heart goes out to our sisters and brothers in Caracol, pretty much.
yeah.
But the farmers, especially in north of the island,
We
all over
said-
the island,
We
has
said
really,
here that
really,
it's
really
not
suffered.
only
You
about
know.
getting the insurance monies that they got
Yeah.
to help with clearing and so on, but you have a farmer that goes every week or every 2 weeks with his nutmeg pickup to
Yeah.
sell to the associate. That's livelihood. That is
That's
money in my
livelihood.
pocket.
Of course.
That and they know.
Of
What
course.
you're doing with a farmer to support you, because a nutmeg tree takes around 7 years to give you a decent call. And what happens then? And then you're hoping by that time the tree that you plant one will be female.
Yeah.
So it's a 33% that it may be successful. You
It's true,
understand?
you understand?
Yeah.
And the issue is, are we going to use the science and technology to make sure that when we plant 200 nutmeg trees, we can get at least 80-90% that being female?
And we need to use the technology in that kind of
exactly.
You can
And
ask the
understand that-
farmer to go back and plant nutmeg and I'm hoping I get
Yes,
a
it.
female.
No, but this is-
So that's the technology or the knowledge we had 100 years ago. It cannot apply today.
Yeah,
today.
like it. No, but it's available. For example, if you look at cannabis in the United States and elsewhere, you can buy the female seeds. So the technology is there to determine the seeds that we plant in the nutmeg are in fact females. But I think it was yesterday or the day before the Prime Minister gave a preliminary announcement indicating that the extent of the damage is about a third of our GDP. And if our GDP is 1.3 billion, thereabout, then you're looking at over 300 million.
Yeah.
So that's huge. That's enormous in terms of that kind of loss.
course.
So that justice, this is the result.
So
this
that-
is what
so-
we're experiencing. Yeah.
But to go back to the issue
Yeah.
of reparations,
Yes.
we now need to forge a relationship
Yeah.
and harness these
Yeah.
issues
Yeah.
of climate reparations with the reparations that we speak of.
Yeah.
Because it is really and truly, we small countries, we vulnerable states,
Yeah.
we are essentially paying the price for somebody else's damage, somebody else's
Exactly.
mistake, somebody else's
So
atrocities.
that was the question,
We are
Ali.
facing the brunt of it.
How can reparations help to address the ongoing poverty? And I want to call it economic disparities in the Caribbean territory, in our Caribbean territories. How is it going to work, really? Yeah.
Professor Beckles referred to it as the most important struggle of this particular century. Because although, as I keep making the point that as developing countries we have made some strides,
Yeah.
but the gap between the rich and the poor continue to widen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Despite the fact that we in Grenada believe that we have a more comfortable way of life and so on, but the gap between the rich and poor. And we just address the issue of Hurricane Beryl and the impact that it had on the agricultural sector. But let us not forget the drought which we had right before Beryl, the issue of water management, water
Yes.
availability, right? How do we, for the next, well, I have come to the conclusion that we have nothing called rain season and dry season
Yeah.
again. Rainfall when you want, sunshine when you want. But how do we know water security is an important issue that as a country we need to address?
issue.
Big issue. Where are we getting the resources now to seriously invest in water storage and that sort of thing? That's a serious issue.
There's a
So that
prediction by
the-
2030 or 2040, water is going to be the most important resource.
Resources globally.
Fresh
Yeah.
water.
well, fresh water.
Fresh water.
But we have to be preparing for that now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't wait for 2030, 2040.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I have not heard anything with
Yeah.
regards to, you know, how are we going to put structures from now with regards to how are we going to manage the water resource going forward. And the government, from its annual revenue, whether it's taxes, CBI, and so on, may not necessarily be in a position to make all the strategic investments that we speak of. And this is where we believe that reparations through climate justice and reparative justice for the atrocities, for the harm which was caused through slavery, slave trade, and so on, must be seriously fought for.
When you listen to Prime Minister Miyamoto speak about our Green Climate Fund, our 120-something million Nawasa Secure, has taken us 6+ years to get boots on the ground, right? Between the contracts.
And that's the bureaucracy.
Yes, and so on. And we cannot wait. We are at a crisis situation in the Caribbean to get grant funding from these kind of funding agencies and take 6 years. It is just not feasible.
Not feasible. And Prime Minister Mia with the very strong initiative and so on, and calling for an overhaul with the financial governance of the world. It cannot remain the same, because you can't wait for 6 years to deal with a crisis of today.
And the Germans are here doing it themselves. In other words, they're employed here.
Taking over Petit Martinique.
Yeah. The Germans are here, you know.
Yeah.
G-Crews, they're here. They're
spending money for themselves.
spending money for themselves. It's like we're not trusted.
No, those are serious issues that confronts
Yeah.
national development, and not just Grenada, but when we speak of all these reparative justice issues, we speak of the entire region, because we're island states at the end of the day.
How important is it to build coalitions and alliances both within the region and outside of the Caribbean to advance reparational justice?
Extremely important. We have been, first of all, a major conference on reparations was held in Accra, Ghana in November of last year, so that we have made the strategic link with the African continent and the African Union. You may know that September 7th every year is CARICOM AU Day, so that the African Union, the entire continent, joining hands and forces with us in the Caribbean is extremely important in fostering that struggle for reparative justice. Groups, organizations within the UK, within France, and so on, and civil societies and so on, we are engaging them with regards to reparative justice. So that, but what you may find, and in the US as well, there is a bubbling struggle in California, Boston, and these places and different states. But what you may find in the US and the UK is that we have splinter organizations. It will be ideal for we to have an umbrella organization as what we have in the Caribbean for reparative justice, but within the UK and the US you may have different groups in different states and so on that are addressing the issue of reparations. But these strategic linkages with groups in the diaspora and on the African continent and so on is extremely important going forward, so that it impacts the local politics in the countries that we are addressing, like the UK, France, and so on and so forth. If you notice now, very interesting, in Europe, and coming from the French Revolution, the rise of the right-wing policies and so on within the France and the European Union.
Yeah.
They are winning more seats in elections and so on. They're running the middle and the left scared, basically. Now, what is it that can counter that surge with the right, the extreme right in Europe and so on, is the local groups and so on the ground, dealing with issues of reparations and so on within Europe, Western Europe in particular. I mean, you know, and it's not lost on us. I mean, famous footballers like Mbappe and so on is making public pronouncements and saying, asking people to go out and vote and not to support the extreme right.
At the local level, right here, in terms of you chairing the local commission, if tomorrow Tom, myself, Chris wants to be active on this issue of reparation, what do we do? Is it possible?
Of course. But what we want, ideally now, that's why the push is on now, is to establish the secretariat Yeah.
The
Because
structures,
the
you know.
structures have to be there. So that, for instance, you have a where you can go get pamphlets, register, this and that and the other.
Yeah.
As it is now, we are also in the process of trying to establish a Facebook page and have the online
Yeah.
presence
Yeah.
and so on. But without resources, it's
Yeah, you
extremely
kind of need a
difficult
secretariat. You need
to really run that.
absolutely.
To
Yes,
really
yes,
run that
yes,
and
you
take it to
can.
the other level.
Yes,
You
yes,
see,
I
and that is not just a restriction in Grenada alone. None of the
But the fact that our government, the Prime Minister, has spoken on this the reparation issue, one would think that, as a from a policy point of view, that this could happen, may happen.
put simply, you need to put your money where your mouth is.
About this, yes.
You know,
Yes,
but
yes.
it's a serious issue where we need funding to take the reparative struggle to a different level.
It has to be
And
a
a lot,
budget-
there has to be a budget item.
Yeah.
It has to be a budget item.
So we recall you referenced it, the English woman who came to Grenada, identified the links with her ancestors, and made a donation, a contribution of what, £1 million? I don't recall.
£100,000, which works out to
£100,000.
120,000.
Could some of those funds be used for the establishment of the institutional arrangements to deal with the bigger issue?
Ideally, we don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
No, because ideally what we want to do with the resources from reparative justice
Yeah.
is to invest in strategic areas.
Okay. Okay.
For instance, one of the things that Grenada really doesn't have a national park. A national, whatever you name
But
it.
the government said they're
Heroes.
establishing one. Yeah, they said they have identified this area next to Camon Park as the national park, Heroes Park.
Heroes Park.
That's
You did. We have well, museum for want of a better word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We have a public library.
True.
You
true,
know, so
true.
that there is a lot of and public library now is not going
books.
it's not books. It's not books.
Not books.
You know what I mean?
Not books.
You know, it's all these different technology things that you need to,
yeah.
and so too national museums and so on.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean, it's brought alive with all the 4D and
So
3D
the
and all of that.
awareness, because a lot of our young people, Ali, are not aware. They're not engaged. They're on a different trip. I don't know. How do we?
That's what we have to fix.
How do we? The consciousness. You know. How do we?
Education.
History, yeah.
Education, and I always speak of education for liberation. It begins with the classrooms.
Yeah.
So that you have about 20 something now O-level subjects that students write. You know what I mean? But in there, and Dr. Nicole Dawad launched a book last year that can be taught to the
Yes.
Form 1s and in the higher primary schools. That's an excellent start.
Yeah.
But we need the teaching of the issue of reparative justice and climate justice and so on in our primary and
I
secondary
like the
schools.
fact that you've linked them and you've
well,
explained
yes,
the
because-
relationship. You know.
But it's the same struggle, you know.
It's interesting.
It's the same struggle, really.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, different subject, same day. So that
Because some of the culprits, we call them that, are the same.
same. It's not some. All of them the same. Yeah, it's same colonial powers that of course you have major global players now
Yeah.
like China, for
Yeah,
instance,
that's
with regards to climate change and so
Yes,
on.
that's correct.
But really and truly,
India.
and India and so on
India,
are
yeah.
using it. And when you read a lot of literature,
Yeah.
how then can you fault a developing country like India and China and so on, who really and truly on the backwater for years,
Yes.
who are now speeding up and trying to catch up and so on.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of point that President Ofanali was making on that DVC program when he was saying, listen, we have done so much for the forest and so on. You call Guyana the backwater and so on. Now we are making some petrodollars to really develop our lot. How then?
yeah.
You're coming after us now. You're telling us not to use this and so on, but you have developed society. In other words, and the point we need to make, the issue of climate reparations and reparations
Yeah.
is not handout. That's the point. So that is green fund and so on that we're speaking about and so on. It's not aid or grant. It is an obligation, and it's a debt owed to us.
Something you created, something you need to fix, something you need to.
It's a debt. It's your debt you have to pay. It's an obligation.
Something you created that affects people.
So when I see it all the time and so on, especially in the COP meetings and so on and so forth, the advocacy seems to be, well, come and help us. No, you need to pay this debt. You have created this. You put the world in this situation.
You know what I mean? The states have now come together as one and to tell them that it's not about,
it's not
about
grant, it's not about handout as an obligation.
You cause and effect.
Yeah.
It's a cause and effect.
It's a cause and effect.
Yeah.
And the only way to deal with it is that you have to put the money where your mouth is, as you say.
Listen, and unfortunately, even some of our own people, when we speak of reparations of slavery and slave trade and so on, they say, well, that happened a long time ago and so on. But we say to them, no, the legacies are still here with us.
Impact
is still here.
The cause and effect again.
Still here for generations. The issues of education, the issues of health, the very issue of underdevelopment is a direct cause of the state. You could link it direct. Same thing with the climate issues of the climate justice.
We have a classic example in the Caribbean with Haiti and France.
Oh.
And the US and them and what they did with Haiti. With the loan and this and
that again is if persons do not understand that, the issue of reparations, the Haiti France model is the clearest example. I mean, you just have to read the history of Haiti.
Not a handout.
Including the US and Canada.
US and Canada and so. Yeah. Now Haiti had to pay France 20 million francs for France not to invade Haiti and just to preserve their independence. But not only that, the USA refused to recognize Haiti as an independent country until they pay France.
Yeah. But they had to borrow the money and pay interest on it.
Borrow the money from French banks.
And
so all these
million francs is about $1 billion.
It was only,
it's just crazy.
So
I think they finished paid in
30
something or 42.
They kept them in poverty for almost a century.
So these are money that could go to health, education, and this and that and the other. And then the US came with a history and so on and set up these political oligarchs in Haiti. And just basically rip off the rest.
As a lawyer, Ali, you could tell us, probably that's criminal,
Well, it is criminal.
Right issue, as you spoke about earlier.
No, there's a lot of literature now with regards to the human rights issues of climate justice. That is going on, and I think Chris touched on it nicely. In terms the reality is it makes it more difficult for us to survive, and it affects our very survival. I mean, Hurricane Janet was in what? 55, right?
50 years before Ivan.
And
now 20 years.
Yeah. But even Ivan, we get touch Emily, Dominica get Maria. Almost every year now. If it's not Grenada, it's another Caribbean island. So what it means we're going on in soccer.
We are quickly running out of time, Ali. Any closing comments you want to make on that?
I want to emphasize, and I want to call on the government to declare August 1st as a national holiday in commemoration of Emancipation Day. It is not good enough for us to continue to celebrate Emancipation Day on the first Monday in August. That is a distortion of our history. And we must be conscientious as a people to do what is right for our ancestors. Our ancestors will be grateful. They speak to me and they say to me that August 1st in the Emancipation Day, I want to urge our fellow citizens to wear something African tomorrow. I know a lot of persons have said to me they have nothing African in their wardrobe, but a shirt, a bandana, a head tie, the ladies could always find something. And this is what we do for Independence Day. We believe wearing our ancestral wear will be a nice way to commemorate Emancipation Day. So I want to encourage, and St. Andrews do have some activities there
tomorrow
and over the weekend.
Over the weekend
as well. In fact, there's a strong emancipation influence now in what was formerly known as Rainbow Festival. CEDU is doing some really good work, and that ought to be encouraged. So that, my argument is that a lot of the holidays that we have is religious based. Corpus Christi and so on, Christmas and so on. But what's the relevance of Corpus Christi in today's society and so on and so forth, you see? So that we need to, and it's a hell of a thing that we are struggling for what is ours in our own society. We can't blame white man now, or the British, for not having August 1st as Emancipation Day, you see? So I want to make the point, happy emancipation to all. Yeah. So tomorrow, just as we say happy Merry Christmas, happy emancipation, and ask and encourage persons to take part in emancipation celebrations.
Thank you, Brother
and a good ways to wear your African dress. Pleasure.
Viewers,
well, that will work.
that's all the time we have. We'll see you next week at the same time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Carnival Pulse, a vibrant live broadcast event that showcases the spirit of Grenada's Carnival, is coming to the heart of St. George's from July 29th to August 9th. This program will capture the rich tapestry of culture, music, and dance that defines this festive season. Join MTV Fusion FM in collaboration with Grenville Property Corporation Limited for a pulsating carnival experience at the Esplanade Mall Courtyard from 4 p.m. Monday to Friday, commencing July 29th. Carnival Pulse is coming.